Hello and welcome back to the Young Just Us podcast. My name is Roman and I'm doing an issue-by-issue deep dive into the 1998 run of DC Comics' Young Justice. I hope you're all doing well this week. No housekeeping or updates really, so let's just jump right in. Last week we covered issue 2, in which we went to an unspecified Middle Eastern country, met Sheikh Ali Ben Steen, parody of Ben Stein, while Robin, Superboy, Impulse, and later Red Tornado were all dragged along by their newly acquired Super Cycle to complete its last program task, free its previous owner, the villain Rip Roar, from Apocalypse. Turns out Rip Roar stole the Super Cycle, which also conveniently turns out to be what it's actually called, from the new gods of New Genesis, and they imprisoned him as punishment. Not so anymore. He wanted the cycle back, but he wasn't a very good owner, so the cycle decided to stick with the boys. The Sheik offered the boys anything they wanted in return for saving his life and defeating Rip Roar, and Impulse did ask for something, but we don't know what that is yet. Oh, and Special Agents Fight and Mad from the DEO were also there for some reason. I just wanted to say that in last week's episode, I was kind of troubling the Ben Stein parody as a possible anti-Semitic stereotype, but I wasn't really thinking about Peter David's own Jewish heritage, the writer of the comic, and I know that playing into stereotypes in creative settings can be part of the experience of minority identities, and again, that was something Ben Stein himself also did quite a bit. And I'm not Jewish myself, so, in retrospect, I don't personally think that that was done in an anti-Semitic spirit or anything, but also my opinion about it isn't super relevant. I do stand by the Islamophobia, though. That was quite troubling, I think. Anyway, this week we'll be discussing issue 3, which I like a lot more than the first two, so let's get into it. The third issue of Young Justice is titled, quite cheekily, the issue before the one where the girls show up. Indeed, Wonder Girl and Arrowette, as well as Secret, will finally appear in the main series next issue, so definitely look forward to that. But this issue was published on October 7th, 1998, so they actually skipped a month because issue 2 came out in August. I did some research, and I believe that this was because DC was releasing DC 1 Million during the month of September, which was a huge crossover event, so no doubt Young Justice's can kind of got kicked down the road a bit, but that's okay, we're back just in time for a Halloween special. This issue was written by Peter David, penciled by Todd Knock, inked by Larry Stucker, colored by Jason Wright, lettered by Ken Lopez, edited by Eddie Berganza, and panel separations were done by Art Studio Digital Chameleon as usual. Todd Knock, Larry Stucker, and Patrick Martin contributed to the cover art, which I will be displaying on screen in the YouTube version of this episode right now, but if you're just listening, don't worry, because I will describe it. Robin, Superboy, and Impulse are in ill-fitting Halloween costumes of their JLA analogs. Robin in a Batman costume, Superboy in a Superman costume, and Impulse in a Flash costume. They're on Mr. Mxyzptlk's doorstep, and Robin is telling the other two, "You had to say trick or treat." Impulse is holding a rock or possibly a lump of coal rather than candy, ostensibly the trick that Mr. Mxyzptlk delivered him as punishment for not saying the magic Halloween words. The doorway opens into the open space of the universe, and Mr. Mxyzptlk is holding a bowl of candy and turning to the reader, saying, "And wait until you see what I really do to them inside." And the cover also has an orange sticker under the main Young Justice title that advertises a Halloween scare with Mr. Mxyzptlk. It's a cute cover, and I really like how it continues the theme of Young Justice being compared to the JLA. The boys in the literal ill-fitting suits of their counterparts is very evocative and of course also fits the Halloween theme really well. Them dealing with a classic Superman villain also plays into that. The idea of them being ill-equipped to deal with a quote-unquote grown-up villain, even though they don't really, as you'll see in the comic. The synopsis for this issue on DC Universe Infinite reads, "Meet Mr. Mxyzptlk, a studious young scholar of the fifth dimension. Wait, that can't be right. Reality warping and time travel hijinks ensue when a group of magicians accidentally brings a young Mxyzptlk into the real world during Halloween." Very funny. I love when synopses kind of play into that. They're like, wait, that can't be right. I'm going to get into the comic now, so feel free to read along, just listen, or watch the YouTube version where you can see select panels I've pulled from this issue. We open on Halloween night, the captions referencing the pagan origins of the holiday, and that some, rather than trick-or-treating, take Halloween much more seriously. Hooded figures chant in Latin, then declaring that they're tapping into the science magic core of the multiverse. They're all on computers, which are all connected to a big printer in the middle of a summoning circle. They're apparently attempting to access techno-magic from another dimension and bring it into this one. The spell code they're performing doesn't work at first, but they retry, and a bolt of lightning hits the printer through a skylight, frying all of the computers, but making the printer print out an image of Mr. Mxyzptlk, which quickly comes to life. This, however, seems to be a younger version of Mr. Mxyzptlk, still in college, evidently. He says that this is a great opportunity to pursue his thesis on three-dimensional primitive life forms, though he must remember the sound advice of his professors and not have any fun doing it. Okay, So the Latin that the occultists are chanting is basically 4 random but commonly used terms. The first being res ipsa loquitur, which translates to the thing speaks for itself. This is a common law doctrine that says a court can basically infer things about a case from the nature of the case itself. For example, in the case of a child suffering from starvation, the situation in itself suggests neglect from the child's parent or guardian, because legally a child cannot starve themselves, someone else has to have starved the child. Sorry for that kind of dark example, but moving on. The second Latin phrase is Pax Vobiscum, which means peace be with you. Anyone who is Catholic or familiar with the comedian John Mulaney probably knows this is used in Catholic Mass. The answering phrase used to be and also with you, but now many churches have adopted and with your spirit instead. The third phrase is pro bono publica, which is also a legal term, more commonly transliterated as pro bono publico, meaning for the good of the people. You've probably heard of lawyers or other professionals working pro bono, just meaning that they're working without pay, i.e. only for the good of the people. The fourth phrase is res judicata, also a legal term, meaning judged matter, or this matter has been judged. In court, judges use this to deny or preclude further appeals or relitigations of a particular case. After that, they start speaking Yiddish, as far as I can tell, and I couldn't find a good translation, or any translation for that matter. I mean, part of the problem is that it's transliterated into the Roman alphabet instead of being written in Hebrew, so I wouldn't know where to start in looking it up, you know? I did learn that sei gesund is like a farewell interjection. It literally means be healthy, and that's one of the things they say, but I'm afraid I'm no help for the rest of it, so I really encourage any Yiddish speakers to shoot me an email. I majored in linguistics in college, so this stuff always interests me quite a bit. Moving on, a good joke in here is that when the spell doesn't work the first time, one of the cultists says, "The 3 horsemen of the computer age plague us once more, abort, retry, or fail," and one of the others tells them to hit retry, and they're like, oh, like that ever helps. Pretty good early computer jokes. But moving to the star of the show here, Mr. Mxyzptlk. Okay, if you've never heard of this guy, don't worry, because I hadn't either when I first read this issue. He is a classic Superman villain created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. You might have heard those names before. He was and still is an imp from the 5th dimension, normally depicted as a little old man imp fairy goblin thing. Although he was recently twinkified in the My Adventures with Superman animated show. When I saw that episode, I was genuinely like, what is this thing? I don't know, this Superman character. And then he was like, I'm Mr. Mxyzptlk, and I was like, what? Why are you a blue twink? I didn't not like it. I was just shocked. Wild stuff. You know, sometimes the animators on My Adventures with Superman really show their Voltron Legendary Defender roots. But anyway, back to business. Mr. Mxyzptlk, and sometimes people just say Mr. Mixie, so I will also do that sometimes because I don't want to say Mxyzptlk 50 more times on this episode. Mr. Mixie originally discovered our world / the 3rd dimension by reading a book, and initially came to take over the world, but then he discovered that tormenting Superman was so much fun that he was good with just doing that. He was usually defeated by being tricked into saying his own name backwards, which would send him back to the 5th dimension for 90 days minimum. These kinds of language-based rules and tricks come up a lot with creatures of Mr. Mixie's ilk, that is, fairies, imps, goblins, etc. I have a suspicion that Mr. Mixie as a character takes a lot of inspiration from Rumpelstiltskin. I couldn't find an actual source for this, but, I mean, in the original fairy tale, Rumpelstiltskin was described as an imp or a dwarf. Only his name can be used to defeat him. You get it. Fun fact, I'm mixed. I have black and half white, and my mom, who is white, I guess thought that it was really important for me and my sister to see like diverse people in our children's books. So all of my children's books that my mom would read to me as a kid are like kind of off-brand retellings. I mean, in a good way, like they're all very good and well illustrated, but my Rumpelstiltskin book has all black characters in it. So for like most of my life, I was like, yeah, Rumpelstiltskin is black. And it's the 3 little javelinas, not the 3 little pigs. I don't know, I think it's really funny and sweet. I love my mom. But yeah, Mr. Mixie didn't change much through the years, though the backwards name rule kind of went out the window at some point. But his appearance here in Young Justice was kind of a big deal in terms of lore for the character, because we learn way more about his past than we really ever have. He went to college, he originally thought fun and jokes were stupid, he wanted to be a serious scholar of techno-magic, etc. It's pretty cool that Peter David got to add this lore in sort of like a random issue of Young Justice. As far as the name goes, it's been pronounced a million different ways, it's been spelled a million different ways, but I'm going with the My Adventures with Superman pronunciation, which is also, I think, the most common one, and the spelling from this particular issue, Mxyzptlk. Just so we're all on the same page. Okay. Next scene. Meanwhile, Robin, Impulse, and Superboy are hosting a Halloween party as Young Justice. Superboy is showing off to some girls using his TTK, of course. Impulse is bobbing for apples, bothering the DJ, commenting on the quality of the dip, and taking pictures with people. A cheerleader flirts with Robin, though he doesn't seem very interested, but her quarterback boyfriend, Matt, wants to fight Tim about it. Robin very coolly tries to brush him off, which seems to work insofar as things don't further escalate, but Matt's other football player friends congratulate him and make fun of Robin together. Superboy steps in to defend Robin's honor, high-fiving Matt extra hard, and Impulse steals all of Matt's clothes, leaving him naked, thus humiliating him. Outside the gym, Mr. Mixie observes the whole kerfuffle and thinks this party is perfect for his thesis research. Guys, this is our first 2-page spread in Young Justice. I'll be putting it up on screen in the YouTube version, but it's pages 4 and 5 of issue 3 if you want to look it up. It's very fun. I love the things they can do with impulse and speed impressions in a huge spread like this. And there's a great joke on here where someone is saying to Robin, like, is it my imagination or are there like 20 guys here dressed like Impulse? Because Impulse is running around so fast talking to everyone and Robin is just deadpan like I hadn't noticed. That's what I love about comics. There's so much room for visual gags, and you can really look at a page or a panel for a long time just finding Easter eggs. This is a great page for that. I love Superboy's dialogue where he's lifting the girls up, like, it's Halloween, ladies, the time to lift spirits, which is no problem for me, thanks to my... And the girls interrupt him to say, tactile telekinesis. And he's like, oh, you heard about it, huh? It's like, yeah, everyone's heard about it, God. I just never get tired of the TTK gag. And I also decided I will start posting a thread of all TTK mentions on the Twitter, so look out for that. Another good Easter egg is that a lot of the people at the party are dressed up as werewolves. Now, later in the series, we discover the joys of Wendy the Werewolf Stalker, which is DC's knockoff Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and it's also confirmed that werewolves are real in the DC universe, so are these teens real werewolves? Fans of Wendy? Both? I don't know, I just think those possibilities are funny. Bart still hates Hanson and is bothering the DJ to put on something else, and there's also a joke where he's taking a picture with some kids and the person taking the picture is like, okay, now try not to look right into the Flash, and Bart's like, the Flash? Where? Very silly. I love Tim being so not interested in the high school drama with the cheerleader and her boyfriend Matt. I was so sure that when the cheerleader was like, is that a batarang in your pocket or are you just happy to see me? Tim would be like, it's a batarang. But whatever. I will label this a tentative TimCon moment with Superboy sort of defending Tim's honor here, like I said. Though later it's implied that he's sort of protecting his own status by making sure that Robin isn't perceived as uncool, though that can be perceived as him, not being completely honest about his motivations. I'll talk more about it later. But I will say it's crazy to escalate immediately to stealing all of Matt's clothes. Like, pretty ruthless of Bart. Elsewhere, Red Tornado is in Chicago checking up on his adopted daughter, Treya Sutton. She's dressed up as a witch for Halloween and is out trick-or-treating with some friends, and Red Tornado cries a single synthetic tear observing her. Poor Reddy. Your mileage may vary on the whole Red Tornado plotline throughout the series. I'm not too bothered by it myself, but I think it certainly doesn't make for the most exciting reading if you're mostly here for the team. I think it's all pretty well written though, and I do like that they keep Treya more involved as a character throughout the run. I also love how in this scene he's trying to covertly spy on Treya in these panels, but he's literally a huge bright red flying android with a cape. Just not the most stealth thing ever, And I also wonder what his tears are made of. It looks basically like pink goop, so I don't know. Back at the party, Robin is feeling less than grateful to Superboy and Impulse for defending his honor against Matt, saying that the city fathers asked them to host this party as a safe alternative to trick-or-treating for teens, so they need to be mature and responsible. Superboy and Robin begin to argue about the whole thing while Impulse tries to get their attention, having noticed something they didn't. Finally, he succeeds, showing them that some of the teens have suddenly turned elderly while others are dancing uncontrollably. Off to the side, Mr. Mixie is studiously taking notes. He observes total panic, roughly 83%, shock bordering on stupor, roughly 11%. Interesting, most interesting. Superboy immediately flies up to confront him, which Mr. Mixie largely ignores in favor of messing with Superboy's flight via TTK, wondering if he's susceptible to something called hexnology. Huge weights and chains appear on Superboy immediately and effectively grounding him, so Mr. Mixie concludes that he is in fact susceptible. Superboy is confused and angry that his TTK has now failed him twice twice in a row, first with the super cycle, now this, but Robin comes over to help him by picking the lock on the weights and chains. Robin deduces that hexnology is a combination of science and magic, and also notes Mr. Mixie's mention of the fifth dimension, wondering if this could in fact be the notorious Mr. Mixie's Pidalic, but he doubts it because he knows Mr. Mixie to be much older than he appears now. Meanwhile, Impulse tries his luck against Mr. Mixie, running him into a wall, while Bart harmlessly vibrates through it. Mr. Mixie appears to be squished flat, though he easily reinflates himself, but then Robin calls the supercycle, which crashes through a wall and runs over Mr. Mixie, flattening him once again, who is getting annoyed with the boys at this point. I think when I first read this issue, I didn't really fully process the fact that YJ were literally hosting the party. I was kind of like, weird diversion for them, but whatever. But yeah, considering that they were literally asked to do this by the city, I can see why Tim's so upset about it. Okay, let's kind of dig into this TimCon moment just because I feel like it. But when Robin is like saying he didn't care about the whole situation with Matt and his girlfriend, and he's insulted that Superboy and Impulse, don't think he can take care of himself, which I don't really think is true. I think Bart at least trusts Robin implicitly and kind of really looks up to him. When they first meet in Robin plus Impulse, Bart is kind of in awe of Robin and feeling like he's so much better at being a superhero than I am. And though he would never say so, I think Superboy has a similar, if less effusive, respect for Tim. So I think first of all, Tim is just reading their intentions wrong, but then Superboy's response is, hey, I hang with you, so I don't want to see anyone dissing you. And from that, Robin sort of extrapolates that Superboy cares about Tim being perceived as uncool because he cares about his own status, which Superboy then sort of plays into to piss Tim off. But he doesn't actually confirm that that's what he was thinking, and I don't know that that's what the original piece of dialogue really implies. He could also be saying hey, you're my friend, so it bothers me when people aren't nice to you, in a very basic and empathetic way. Or both of those things could be true at once. I also do love how Robin does a quick recap for the reader when Superboy asks if he worries about being cool, and he's like, I worry about things like where the mighty endowed disappeared to, how Fight and Mad showed up halfway around the world, what we're going to do when that thing that Impulse requested from Ollie Ben Steen shows up. Thanks for the recap, bro. I was also wondering those things. I guess it's pretty necessary because they skipped a month between this and the last issue, but I think it also speaks to Robin's ability to mentally track a lot of situations at once and perhaps some of his internal anxiety. There was your weekly dose of way too in-depth character analysis. Oh, but we're not done because once again I am proven right by the literal text of the series that Impulse is the ego. If you missed it, in the first issue, the writers, by way of Red Tornadoes, sort of diagnosed the boys as facets of Freud's model of the psyche, with Impulse as id, Superboy as ego, and Robin as superego. And I personally really think, especially in these earlier issues, that Superboy is very id and Impulse is very ego, because a lot of the fundamental disagreements in the team come from Tim and Superboy, illustrating the theorized eternal tug-of-war for control between the hedonistic id and the stalwartly moral superego. And here, once again, Impulse plays the peacekeeper ego, trying to split the difference, or at least keep them all working together long enough to notice what he has noticed, which is Mr. Mixie. There, I segued back into the actual comic. Are you proud of me? I do really like this version of Mr. Mixie that is just sort of genuinely curious and doing little experiments while still being arrogant and not too self-aware. And he's also doing some of his signature reality-altering tricks, just in a scientific capacity this time. Poor Superboy gets hexnologied and thinks his TTK is abandoning him. It's just a rough couple of back-to-back incidents, Con, don't worry about it. Impulse's instinct to run Mixie into the wall is actually really good and kind of works for a second, so great job, Bart. I do kind of feel bad for Mr. Mixie at this point, he's literally just trying to do his experiments, guys. I also would love to know what the heck his original name was, since it apparently wasn't always Mr. Mixie's Pidalic. I would be very interested to know how fifth dimensional linguistics works, Mr. Mixie. And of course Tim would recognize Mixie, and I like how the time stream twist is sort of slowly introduced here. It's also super cute that the super cycle now comes when called. Treya, meanwhile, has been cornered by some mean-looking teens that want her to hand over her candy hole. She runs away as they taunt her witch costume, and she trips, only to start flying like a real witch, leaving the teens baffled. Presumably, Red Tornado has helped her out of this sticky situation. Dude, these teens are very mean. I don't know how old Treya is supposed to be exactly. I think at least 12 to be out trick-or-treating without parental supervision, but I feel like she's drawn so much younger than that, so I don't know. But one of these guys is literally like, "Little witch, we'll stick that broom where the moon don't shine." Like, oh my god, leave her alone. I do love the panel of her flying silhouette in front of the moon like a real witch, though. It's very cute. Back in the gym, the boys are trying to come up with a plan, but Mr. Mixie crushes them with a giant hand, demanding to know why they attacked him. He says that he was only making a scientific inquiry, and he was going to put everything back the way it was, and they didn't even give him a chance to explain. Superboy, having decided that this is in fact Mr. Mixie's Pitalik, confronts him again and tries to say that they know his game, but Robin interrupts him, pointing out that if they tell this younger version of Mr. Mixie how he turns out, then it could interrupt the time stream, impacting the future. Superboy plows ahead though, thinking this will save Superman some trouble retroactively. He tells Mixie, "Listen, Professor, in your future you torment Superman with all sorts of stupid pranks just to tee him off. You act like some sort of jokester and comedian, usually until Superman tricks you back into your own dimension." Mr. Mixie is very turned off by the idea of himself being a trickster or having fun generally, and Impulse asks him to put everything back, which he does, officially swearing off pranks and foolishness forever. Mr. Mix's Pitalik then promptly begins to return to his own timeline and dimension, promising to never darken their doorstep again. Robin stops him before he leaves though, needing to check if this is impacting their world because of the time stream. Indeed, the world outside is a complete hellscape, their present having been completely changed by young Mr. Mixie's decision. Robin comes to the conclusion that they have to get Mixie to change his mind and become Superman's tormentor in his future. Mr. Mixie vehemently opposes. I suppose that Mr. Mixie is technically right that they didn't give him a chance to explain, but he also did fail to explain before messing directly with them, so of course Robin is aware of the timeline-altering possibilities. And once again, Superboy barrels ahead to do what he thinks is best. He's the id, guys. Okay, I'll shut up about it. But when Superboy's explaining his future to Mr. Mixie, he says tee off, which I guess is supposed to be tick off. I just didn't realize that that would need to be censored. Like, to me, tick off is already kind of the censored version of piss off, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Eddie Berganza was like, you can't say tick off. That's as bad as saying the N-word. That's another John Mulaney reference, by the way. I do love how Mr. Mixie is annoyed by being called that, and he's like, it sounds like someone just randomly typed. Ladies and gentlemen, was Mr. Mix's Pitalik the original Key Smash? If so, we owe so much to Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, even more than they're already getting. But yeah, and then Mixie's like, with regard to the future, Superboy tells him of, what the heck, that sounds boring. I promise to never do that. And I guess means it completely genuinely, considering the timeline actually changes so drastically in response. It makes me really curious about what the original inciting incident was to make him start pranking Superman, or if this is now a closed loop in time, like this always would happen and the boys would always need to convince a young Mr. Mix's Pitalik to become a trickster, so this was always the inciting incident. I think that might be the implication here. Time shenanigans, always very fun. Meanwhile, back in Chicago, Red Tornado has finally revealed himself to Treya, still flying them along on her broom, and Treya is happy but confused, saying that her mom told her that he wasn't coming back due to his crisis of humanity. He tells her, to a degree that is the case, but because it is Halloween, Treya, we can pretend that we are what we are not. He proceeds to explain that he's going to try to be there for her and understand what he can and cannot do, but this heartfelt moment is interrupted by them coming across the new and improved hellscape version of the world. Treya asks what's going on, and Red Tornado says he doesn't know, but he has a feeling that the boys are mixed up in it. This is a really sweet scene, and I'm sure hits really hard if you're a Red Tornado fan. We also love a deadbeat dad trying to undeadbeat himself. Like, obviously the situation is complicated with the humanity question, but I think once you feel human enough to adopt a child, you can't really take that back. I feel like it's fundamentally a little selfish to be like, well, I give up. But yes, props to Tornado for trying again, and I really adore that piece of dialogue because it is Halloween, Treya. We can pretend that we are what we are not. Like, what a line. Sometimes Peter David just gets one in that really hits. And it is, of course, really funny that Red Tornado sees the world completely messed up and is immediately like, I know who did this. The 3 teenage boys I've been mentoring. Just like, in a world where aliens and Red Lanterns and Darkseid all canonically exist, he still jumps to YJ without hesitation. Do you really think it's them, Red Tornado, or do you just want to check on them to make sure they're okay? Maybe both? Also, I think he ostensibly drops Treya off at home here because he shows up alone in the next scene. Speaking of. In the meantime, the boys are showing Mr. Mixie old Three Stooges movies to try and activate his trickster gene. It doesn't seem to be working at first, but when Bart asks what he thinks, he says, "It seems so juvenile, so frenetic. I've never seen anything like it. I'm not sure how to react." But after a moment he cracks a smile and then starts laughing uncontrollably. His graduation cap falls off and his hair begins turning gray, and he starts teasing some of the random teenagers still around. Robin says, "My fellow Stooges, I think we've just saved the world." Robin stops him from messing with the kids any further, the three of them hauling Mr. Mixie out, who is thanking them profusely for opening his eyes to a whole new world of pointless stupidity. He does the buzzer handshake trick on Bart, and Superboy punches him, but Mr. Mixie continues to express his gratitude, promising to give Superman his best when the time comes. He disappears back to his own dimension, hair now fully white and looking much more like the Mr. Mix's Pitalik we know. The boys race outside to check on the world and run into Red Tornado, who asks if they've been up to anything strange. Robin tells him he doesn't know the half of it, going outside around him to discover a large Mix's Pitalik themed theme park. Robin asks if the whole world is like this, and thankfully Red Tornado says that it seems to be limited to just this area, much to Robin's relief. He says, "Then I guess we got off lucky." Bart, meanwhile, is having a great time and says he wishes the whole world were like this carnival, and Robin wonders if Bart and Mr. Mixie were separated at birth. I do enjoy the parallel of the Three Stooges and the Three Boys, and having never seen any Three Stooges media, I have no idea if they're able to be mapped onto Tim, Con, and Bart, but please let me know if you have a headcanon about that. I do think there's something here about, perhaps the futility of academia, or the burden of intelligence regarding Mr. Mixie's seemingly inevitable switch to a life of pranks and trickery, diverting from his original path of scholarly pursuits, and the idea that freedom of quote-unquote pointless stupidity is something of an antidote to self-seriousness and tireless dedication to study. But the comic doesn't really go any deeper into it than that, so I won't either because I'm tired. I really love the "My fellow Stooges, I think we've just saved the world" line, because it's really an encapsulation of Young Justice, like saving the world by doing kind of objectively stupid stuff or averting ridiculous disasters. And what that says about, just because some problems seem silly or juvenile or childish doesn't mean they're not important and the world wouldn't benefit from them being solved. I just love that. The slow transformation of Mr. Mixie into the form we know is also interesting, implying it's an uncontrollable effect and not just age. Perhaps whatever species Mr. Mixie is suffer physical effects from dedicating themselves to lives of trickery. The last page is really fun, and I like the idea that the Big Mixie's Pitalik Carnival is a gift he left for them for opening his eyes. Very fun. The joke about Bart and Mixie being separated at birth is really funny, but I'm also so traumatized from comics doing secret sibling storylines that I'm don't even joke, lad. And that's the comic, guys. I really love this one. I think it's a lot of fun and the kind of episodic hijinks that I think is a strength of the Young Justice series. And getting to see a classic villain interact with sidekicks was also so exciting and interesting. The art was great, especially since there were a lot of background characters to be drawn here, and also the nature of Mr. Mixie's magic. I think that's everything for this week, so definitely let me know your thoughts and feelings on the issue, either via the social media or the email. That's all YJU Podcast, all one word, across all platforms. All links will always be in the description or show notes below. Make sure to subscribe to the pod wherever you're listening, and next week, and remember that's next Saturday, I will be covering issue 4 of Young Justice, where we'll finally get the girls on the team and also meet another very silly villain. Thank you for listening, and remember, it's not Young Justice, it's Young Just Us.